Здравейте! Това видео е трета част от поредицата ни за извънземните, като ще разгледаме още няколко любопитни признания, научени в миналото. По времето, когато физикът Боб Лазар и ученият с кодово име Виктор признават на какво са станали свидетели, още един учен се присъединява, а именно микробиологът Дан Буриш. Той е работил в сградата С4 в секретната база Зона 5-10-1, където с екип от биолози е трябвало да изследват тъкани и органи от неизвестен произход. След известно време му показват и това, което изследват, а именно Извънземното Джей Род, което по това време се намира в Зона 5-10-1. Чуйте какво споделя Дан Буриш в първата част на интервюто. Какво е да се срещнеш лице в лице с извънземно, как изглежда то и какво е преживяло. Видеото е много интересно, така че непременно го изгледайте до край, защото дава отговори на много важни въпроси.
Okay, the first question, Dan, they want to know is, where did you work in the mid-90s, and how did you come to be employed there?
Well, several locations in the mid-90s. I had some cover positions here in Las Vegas, which made me look like a good old-fashioned Joe. In fact, I had had some police experience at the late 80s. You're probably centering your question around the work for the government. In 1986, I was approached while working as an undergraduate student in Dr. Bert Bell Barbero's office in his parasitology laboratory, to be exact. I was looking through a scope at the time. Three gentlemen walked into the laboratory, closed the door behind them. There was two uniforms and a suit that were present. Both of the uniforms I would make as most probably being United States Navy. My memory of that one event's kind of hazy after seeing all of the suits and uniforms and whatnot. We spoke for a while. They asked me if I was interested in seeing the world and the like. I told them I, in fact, was. We went through several interview processes, not unlike this. And reviewed my background. I went through several background investigations. Finally, starting up 1991 timeframe, I was cleared for working past groom to the Papoose Mountain facility, that place that doesn't exist, about 90 miles north of here, the nowhere place. That's how I came to work there. My original assignment was at the Groom Lake facility to review histopathology slides. And I went through nearly a year's testing and then was basically let loose for a year, and I heard no contact from them. After that, I was brought back in and shown some higher grade slides of unknown origin. Following that, I was introduced into a working group and subsequently brought into the Papoose facility, the Site 4 facility. We worked for well over a year on slides of unknown origin. After I took a minimum leadership position under several of the other biologists who are already present, most of which are now deceased. You know the names of those individuals. I was then introduced into the level 4-5 facility, and the 4-5 coded for 9. You're again aware. We covered this in ancient history. And so what we did is introduce the new members, myself amongst them, into the clean sphere area, and we were eventually shown the subject for which we were examining the slides. The slides were unusual in that they were in pressurized cells, and they were reviewed by us on a conveyor with a completely automatic microscope. We weren't touching anything. We'd give verbal commands. At the second instance, we were finally allowed to have a VRML, like keyboard, for examining the slides, and I digressed, but then working with the J Rod itself in the ambassadorial suite or the clean sphere suite.
Now, was this under this Project Aquarius?
Yes, yes. Initially, I was assigned as a working member of Project Aquarius. Then finally, I was made an assistant working group leader. And then mysteriously, after one meeting with the J Rod, I was asked to take the working group leader position. I didn't find out why I was asked to take the working group leader position until, well, within this last year. I never understood it because Stephen was older than I. He was my senior not only in ability but in age, and I would have never figured being advanced above an individual like that in ranking within a working group. And in fact, I never considered myself above him. We worked together. The Q94 document that you have in your possession was co-authored. My name went on there as the primary investigator because I was the working group leader. But in fact, he and I were both involved in the authoring of that document.
Oh. Okay. Now, could you explain briefly what you were briefed on who and or what J Rod was? Initially,
I was briefed that J Rod was an alien, specifically from the reticulum system, to reticulum 4. I had no idea the truth. Yes, from 2 reticulum 4 now, but I had no idea the truth of how they came to be. As I said to you before, I have never met an alien, but I have met an extraterrestrial. I found out subsequent to interactions with the J Rod. And again, they have personal names. The term J Rod simply means 15, which was a basing name for where they're located, the number of light years from our location. So they took those names and they identified through the Sigma protocols, the linguistic protocols, with a rod symbol, which was an inertia symbol, and the letter J. And in fact, that was a combination of Mayan and Egyptian numerology having to do with a rod and a J, meaning 10 and 5 for 15.
Okay. Now, 15 light years away, is that the police 876?
876 Charlie, from what I've been told. Now, he did not specifically tell me that was the location, but the number 15 was mentioned.
Well,
they don't call it, apparently, police 876, whatever, Charlie.
How did J Rod get here? I mean, how did he, 15 light years away?
He crashed in 63, from what I understand.
Oh, was that right?
Outside of Kingman.
Okay.
Kingman, Arizona.
Right.
There was a problem involving his physiology and his biophysiological communication with the craft went wrong. And of course, he's ill, as we know, with the MGUS and the paraprotein associated problems. And he crashed.
And how was he? Was he transported immediately from that crash site to the S4 facility? And how?
That I don't know.
Okay.
That I don't know.
You don't know how he came to be at the facility?
I believe he and associates were transferred separately. Mm-hmm. He originally to the Groom Lake facility, okay. And an associate to, I believe, Los Alamos.
Los Alamos.
I have no independent verification of where the associate went, though. All I can say is that he was there at Site 4. Right?
Now, you interacted with J Rod. Was there a general procedure for this interaction?
Well, there was not a general procedure. There was a very specific procedure.
Very specific, okay.
After we would be brought in with our helper biologists, there was controlling helper biologists, those in the gallery, and then the introduction specialist, which was myself on a number of occasions. We entered the clean sphere through a large series of protocols involving pressurization and compartmentalization, no pun intended, until finally we were pressurized in fully encapsulated a TEC, a TES, total encapsulated suit for entrance into the clean sphere. Once we were pressurized and entered into the clean sphere, well, I should digress. We had a medical evaluation, all of that first. But they ceased doing that after a couple of medical evaluations. It was more just interested. Let's get you in and get the work done. I would enter into the clean sphere, and I was not supposed to communicate with the J Rod at all. I was not supposed to know his name. The reality is we were communicating from the time that I entered into the ambassadorial suite external to the clean sphere, talking back and forth freely. I could hear whatever he was projecting at me from thought, and he could very clearly hear what I was thinking. I say hear, meaning perceive. I was supposed to stand over by a hologram projection system, which was run as like a teleprompter system, over to my right, that would be run inside of the clean sphere glass. Hold my hand up and mimic certain signs. And it became a joke. It really did. It became a joke. Those folks who were watching from the gallery running the show thought that I was standing there and mimicking the signs, and this was the only communication underway. They perceived on the day that the approach, the close approach that he made, the grabbing incident that he did with me, they perceived that there was a communication that occurred. So I began getting questioned quite extensively whether or not he in fact was communicating with me, because he had promised not to, apparently, with the Sigma unit. I alluded to the fact that there was conversation underway, but I didn't talk about what it was until, of course, I was caught in my research protocol forwarding ideas that were somewhat different than what they expected, where they expected my private research was going to go, and this is much later. And at that time, the deal was brokered to find out about the doctrine for the convergent timeline paradox. I told them a little bit about what he showed me, a little bit, and they told me a little bit about the DCTP.
Now that you brought that up, which implies travel through time as well as space, and you said that J Rod was retrieved from a crash near Kingman. Was he at that time just traveling through space from the staging area, or?
Yes.
No? Yeah, okay.
Yes.
He wasn't doing any time traveling at that point?
No, not as far as I'm aware.
Okay.
Not as far as he told me, no.
Can you describe J Rod to us, what he looked like and how he behaved?
Yes. The gentleman with which I was associated was approximately 3.5 feet tall. He had a dark brown appearance, very ruddy appearance to his skin. He was in a highly pressurized clean sphere. He exuded glycoprotein-like material through pores on his skin, which was associated with the neuritis, the neuropathy that with which we were dealing.
Did this have an odor to it?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know. I couldn't perceive any odors whatsoever. I was inside my... But I would imagine, but I have no data set to say what it would have smelled like. And in fact, there was nothing I read that indicated whether or not there was an odor. Why? I'm wondering. You've asked that before, and that's why I'm wondering.
Well, yeah, I've heard about this secretion coming through the pores of the skin before,
Mm-hmm.
and there have been those who've had encounters who say they can smell an odor
Okay.
from the skin.
All right. Where were we?
You were describing.
3.5 feet, large head in comparison to torso. So the ratio of the cranial to the torso area would be larger than in what we would call a modern human being. Large, bulbous black eyes. The whites of the eyes had been selected out. So it looked like a large pupil, basically. When you look into his eyes, you feel like you're going to fall into his eyes forever. And I think that probably had something to do with the telepathic nature of his mental structure. Large arms, large length. 4 very thin, sinuous fingers. Nails, not as long as presented in some of the images that you've showed me in the past. The ones done by Tom Mack, was it? By Tom?
Bill, you have.
Oh, yeah, that's it, the Puppet Master photos. I'm smiling because the Puppet Master leads me to other nicknames. But he was hunched over most of the time, could not support himself fully, given muscular atrophy, and that had to do with the peripheral neuropathy under which he was suffering. So he would grunt and move toward me almost in a flopping fashion. Feet were large in comparison to what we would, say our feet would be. He was unclothed 4. Yeah, he was unclothed, which bothered him. He wanted to wear clothing and was refused in every turn. Called himself captive, and justifiably so. His feet were unusual in that his the plantar area had a very large knob underneath what we would call our heel. His facial features were grotesque in comparison to what he showed me what normal would be. He was
Normal of his type?
Yes, yes. He was bilaterally symmetrical to the extent that the disease process was not changing his facial features. Nose was recessed, not a nose like we have, but basically two opercula, 2 orifices. An extremely small mouth, a hard palate, no teeth. His musculature, again, it was suffering from the problem at the myoneural junction due to the neuropathy.
Do you have any idea what his chronological age was?
622.
622.
And that I don't know. That I don't know. That number 622 is now used as an important number within the community. A reference, a request from 622 or a report from 622 could be from anybody. So it's used, and in fact the SRB report that I have with me today, the supplemental report for 0302 that I have, probably is labeled from reviewer 622. I haven't, it's going to be a cold reading when we look at it, but it's probably from 622. They excrete in a manner that we would excrete. Their external genitalia are different than ours. The females have somewhat like vulva, but they have a clasper situation. The male has a male clasper, the female claspers. And if it looks like a disc with rectangular solids that are rotated into position for clasping at the inguinal region. They do have internal fertilization.
Now, this was something you read because you didn't see a female, did you?
No, this is something he showed me of his wife.
Oh, internally.
Yes.
And how was that image presented to you? Did it appear?
I was inside the image.
You were inside the image?
That's what it felt like.
Like virtual reality?
Yes. Everything that he showed me when this was the incident. When he projected it into me, it felt like I was there. My sensations were heightened. Quite extraordinary.
Was there a background perceived? Was she in a domicile of some sort?
Again, excuse the pun, a gray surrounding. Very, very dull, drab surrounding. Almost like a concrete evacuation center. Where you'd have evacuation zones underneath the hotels in case of mass casualties or a mass disaster. Where it was a very clinical environment.
So were you impressed that he was kind of depressed about his situation?
He was extremely depressed. If we were to term him human, I'm not a psychologist, but I think he would be termed as clinically depressed. He wept, but he didn't weep outside. He wept when he was with me.
Well, could you estimate what his level of intellect was?
Smarter than me. He was smarter than me by a long range.
Did he have a wide range of knowledge?
The mathematics that he showed me blew my mind.
Was that right?
He showed me concurrently not only the equations for the rule of nines, but he also did so diagrammatically, and he did so with three-dimensional, like a VRML system, where I was watching cubes come together. So that if I was not understanding the script, I would understand it as a child learns group theory in mathematics. Highly evolved, highly intellectual, highly repressed emotionally. When I was with him, I felt great happiness to be with him, but I could feel his great sadness, not only because of what he wanted to become, what he knew he was by being present with us, but where he was and how he was being treated. He was not part of the group that has to be catered to involving the T9 treaty that was just signed. He wanted to help. He was willing. When I went in, for God's sakes, I took well over, nearly 300 individualized aspiration samples from his neurological system. He would hold his arm out for me to take them. There was no pain medication. And whenever I would fire the introduction system to remove the sample, it was an aspirative avulsion system, he would cry, and then he would just stand there and look at me.
There was a suction.
Yes, yeah. In fact, I would bring the sample after the initial removal from his tissues into the introduction system, and then approve it and move it from there to one of the helper biologists. Usually it was Robert, outside of the clean sphere, and then he would move it from there to be handled under our normal protocols. It was a level 5 past our the BMBL system. He'd just stand there and take it.
So, do you feel the communication that he established with you when you were in contact with him, could he extend this communication over any distance?
60 feet.
60 feet?
Definitely 60 feet.
Okay.
It was 60 feet from the center of the clean sphere to the introduction ramp going down into the ambassadorial suite. So at least 60 feet.
So you don't feel like he's been in communication with you since that time?
No.
Okay.
No.
Was it selective in some way? Was it willfully selective on his part who he wanted to communicate?
Yes. Yes. The folks that I'm sorry. The folks that wanted to find out what he was saying to me, they knew darn well that he was communicating with me after a while, because I was smiling. I couldn't help it, because we were actually joking back and forth. And they didn't know. They didn't have any clue. They didn't have any clue what he was saying. So it had to have been selective. They certainly wouldn't have pressed me like they did after I woke up from the big attention scenario. I woke up outside of the clean sphere. I was drug out of there by Stephen. He finally got a secondary suit on and drugged me out of the clean sphere. No, they had no clue. They had no clue what he was saying. I'm sure of it. They were extra rough in removing my plug and my catheter and all of that business after I got out of the TES.
Yeah. One of the things that I want to ask you now, parting slightly from this subject, we're going to ask this last question, then we're going to take a break, okay? And then we'll see where we go from there. But
I'm smiling because I'm envisioning the lack of the lights.
yeah, okay. But everybody's
Yeah, don't like this at all.
Why, and of course you're going to have to restate this again, why are you talking to us now? What is your intention in telling us about this, about your involvement?
It's multifocal. It's multifocal. There's several reasons. The largest reason is not the most important reason. The largest reason from a personal perspective is to step out from under the Black Ops community and retire. I'm ready. I told you before, I can see myself walking along a pond and not being bothered by anybody except for maybe a bird here or there and taking a sample and just taking my time and looking at it for fun, for enjoyment.
And you're worried about your health, right?
Well, my health is degrading. There's no doubt about that. The heart disease that I have is in fact degrading my health. Time is coming. I don't know how long that is, and of course that's within God's providence.
So you'd like to maybe have some freedom, to have some
Yes.
time of your own.
Yes.
To go to Walden's Pond or something, right? Study the life.
Disappear at Walden's Pond.
Right.
There are other reasons too. You know, without yelling the poor me scenario. Yes, people have a right to know. I mean, that's, you know, other folks have screamed that. Some of them, I think, real. Some of them phony as a $3 bill. Yes, they have a right to know what is going on. They have a right to know because this is their future. Or maybe not. And it depends upon our wisdom or lack thereof. This gets me thinking. The one thing that we've heard from the Brookings Institution study, the famous clamp study, was this would cause a great social upheaval. It would destroy our social bonds, our religious bonds. And in fact, I know I'm digressing, but I ramble. Every time an individual is approached with the issue of would this destroy your faith, I have heard, it's my experience only, I'm sure there are going to be varied opinions, no, it'd strengthen it. It'd strengthen it. From a certain perspective, yes. From another perspective, no. The Brookings Institution was correct on a certain level. Suspend disbelief for a moment and walk with the idea that this is real. That the ruins that are present on the moon and on Mars, the ancient temples, are in fact the gifts of our own progeny. Can you imagine what is going to happen when those temples, which were prayed to as the gods, are found out to be nothing more than the creations of men, that the men themselves were those who were being worshipped? Will fall headlong into the pool of Narcissus. And maybe that's a good thing. Maybe that's a good thing. Maybe we'll find truth, love, God, something other than buildings and stones and marble. Maybe we'll find out who he really is, or she, it, or just us.
Впечатляващ разказ на микробиологът Дан Буриш. Не само потвърждава, че има извънземни, а и че те са в контакт с Земята от хилядолетия. Буриш загатва, че е възможно те да са създателите на много от чудесата на тази планета, които ние все още не можем да си обясним. Има ли богове или извънземните са нашите създатели? Пораждат се много въпроси, на които ще се радваме да чуем вашите коментари. Очаквайте втората част на интервюто, в която Дан Буриш разкрива още по-интересни неща за срещата му с извънземното Джей Род и чудесата на света. Ако това видео ви е харесало, то ви молим да натиснете палец нагоре и да го споделите с приятели. Epic Stories ви дава информация, която масовите медии не споделят. Ако искате да научавате още много интересни неща, то се абонирайте за канала ни, като натиснете бутона Subscribe. Натиснете и камбанката, за да получавате известия и да не пропускате нищо ново. Желаем ви усмихнат и приятен ден!